Good day. This is the Corrupt True Crime Podcast, and I'm Charlie Cruz. Today's episode is about one of the most audacious prison breaks in American history, the 1962 Alcatraz escape that continues to baffle investigators and captivate the world more than 60 years later. 3 men vanish from America's most infamous maximum security prison on a cold June night. They squeeze through ventilation grates they'd spent months secretly widening with sharpened spoons, climb 30 feet of plumbing pipes in total darkness, breach the roof, descend 50 feet down the exterior wall, and launch a homemade raft into the frigid, treacherous waters of San Francisco Bay. The next morning, guards find lifelike dummy heads in their beds, complete with real hair and hand-painted features, staring back from their pillows. The inmates are gone. Alcatraz, the so-called escape-proof rock, has been breached. And here's the truly remarkable bit. Nobody knows if they drowned in those icy currents, or if they actually made it to shore and disappeared into legend. 6 decades later, it remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American criminal history. Now, you've got to understand something about Alcatraz. This wasn't your typical prison. This was where the federal system sent the absolute worst of the worst, the incorrigible, the violent, the escape artists who'd proven they couldn't be held anywhere else. Perched on a rock island a mile and a quarter offshore in San Francisco Bay, surrounded by water so cold it could induce hypothermia in minutes, with currents running 5 to 8 miles per hour that could sweep a swimmer out to sea. 14 previous escape attempts in 29 years. 23 inmates caught. 6 shot dead. 2 drowned with bodies recovered. 5 missing, and presumed drowned. Nobody had ever successfully escaped from Alcatraz. Nobody. The mastermind was Frank Morris, and if you were casting someone to outsmart the system, you couldn't do better. Orphaned young, bounced through foster homes, first arrested at 13, developed into a career criminal with a specialty, escaping from prisons. Louisiana State Penitentiary couldn't hold him. When they transferred him to Alcatraz for a bank robbery conviction, his IQ tested at 133, superior intelligence, top 2% of the population, quiet, methodical, patient, the kind of mind that could see possibilities where others saw only concrete and steel bars. His partners were the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, bank robbers from a poor Georgia farming family with 14 children. They'd grown up swimming in Florida's rivers and lakes, which would prove rather relevant. They'd already escaped once before from Atlanta Penitentiary, got caught hiding in a lake. Apparently, they hadn't learned their lesson about aquatic getaways, or perhaps they had, and this time they'd do it properly. The fourth conspirator was Alan West, a car thief who'd make a critical contribution to the plan, but would ultimately miss the boat, quite literally. He was working a maintenance detail when he noticed something fascinating. The concrete around the ventilation grates in their cells was deteriorating. Salt air corrosion. Years of it. The prison's greatest weakness, hidden in plain sight. Here's where it gets interesting. These men began planning their escape with the patience of surgeons and the ingenuity of engineers. They had no proper tools, no resources, no access to anything that could help them. So they improvised everything. Modified spoons stolen from the cafeteria became digging tools. They allegedly converted a vacuum cleaner motor into a makeshift drill. Every night after lights out, they'd work in near silence, chipping away at the concrete around their air vents, timing their scraping with the prison's music hour to mask the sound. During the day, they'd hide their progress with false ventilation covers made from painted cardboard. Guards would walk past during inspections, glance at what looked like perfectly intact grates, and move on. The holes grew slowly, 10 inches, then 12, just wide enough for a man to squeeze through if he exhaled completely and contorted his body. But here's the brilliant part. They knew getting out of their cells was only the beginning. They needed to fool the guards long enough to get a proper head start. So they created dummy heads, not crude lumps of cloth. These were works of art. They mixed soap, toilet paper, and concrete dust from their digging to form the heads, used real hair collected from the barbershop floor, painted them with flesh tones stolen from the prison's art supplies, added eyebrows, eyelashes, subtle facial features. These dummies were so convincing that when authorities later displayed them, people genuinely did a double take. In dim light, at a distance, during a routine bed check, absolutely convincing. Then there was the small matter of crossing the bay. They'd need flotation, so they started collecting raincoats, more than 50 of them, stolen from other inmates and the prison supply over months. They used heat likely from steam pipes in the hidden utility corridor behind their cells to seal the raincoats together, built a 6 by 14-foot raft with 3 separate chambers, fashioned life preservers for each man, carved wooden paddles, even created a bellows device from a concertina, a musical instrument, to inflate the raft. Proper maritime engineering from prison contraband. 6 months they prepared, 6 months of meticulous, patient work in a maximum security facility with regular cell searches and constant guard presence. And nobody noticed a thing. More after our break.
My name is Tom Sachs. I'm an artist in New York City. For nearly 2 decades, I have been collaborating with Nike.
Nike running is for runners, Nike basketball is for basketball. Nike craft is for everyone else.
The night of June 11th arrives. Normal routine, nothing unusual. Lights out at 9:30. The 3 men, Morris and the Anglin brothers, place their dummy heads carefully on their pillows, arrange blankets to suggest sleeping bodies, position everything just so. At 10 o'clock, guards conduct the final count, walk the tiers with flashlights, see what appear to be 3 inmates sleeping peacefully, count complete, all present and accounted for. Behind those false faces, the cells are empty. The men are already squeezing through those 10-inch openings into the utility corridor. Morris goes first, then John Anglin, then Clarence. They're in. Alan West tries to follow but discovers his ventilation grate won't budge. Recent maintenance had cemented it more thoroughly. He chips away desperately, but it's taking too long. The others face a decision. Wait and risk everyone getting caught, or proceed. They proceed. In complete darkness, they navigate the utility corridor to a section where pipes run 30 feet upward to the top of the cell block. They climb cold, damp cast iron in pitch blackness, reach the concrete roof of the cells, cross to a ventilator shaft that West had previously loosened during his maintenance duties, remove the cover, climb through to the actual roof of the prison. They're outside now, on top of the cell house, exposed but cloaked in darkness. Next comes the harrowing bit. 50 feet down the exterior wall, descending pipes on the north side of the prison, one wrong move from a fatal fall or a noise that alerts the guards. They make it, reach the shore, inflate their raft, don their life preservers, grab their paddles and launch into the frigid waters of San Francisco Bay. Water temperature, 52 degrees, strong tidal currents, darkness and fog, 1.25 miles to the nearest land at Angel Island, 2 miles to the Marin County shore. And then they vanish, completely, utterly, without a trace. 7 o'clock the next morning, guards conduct the wake-up count, spot the dummy heads. For a moment, perhaps, confusion, then realization, then pandemonium. The prison goes into immediate lockdown, FBI notified, Coast Guard alerted, a massive air and sea search launches across San Francisco Bay. Every law enforcement agency in Northern California mobilizes. The media descends. The escape from the escape-proof prison leads every news broadcast in the country. The search reveals tantalizing clues but no bodies, no survivors. A paddle floating near Angel Island. Personal effects, including a wallet wrapped in plastic containing Anglin family photographs, pieces of raincoat material, a makeshift life preserver washed up near the prison. Everything suggests the raft made it at least partway across. But of the men themselves, nothing. The FBI investigates for 17 years, interviews hundreds of potential contacts, family members, known associates, age progresses photographs, follows leads across the country. Some are promising. A few seem credible. In Brazil, years later, someone spots 2 men who look remarkably like the Anglin brothers. Photographs surface that forensic analysts say might actually be them, but nothing definitive, nothing confirmable. In 1979, the FBI officially closes the case. Conclusion: presumed drowned. The water was too cold, the currents too strong, the distance too far. Hypothermia would have set in within 20 minutes. The raft, cobbled together from raincoats, probably failed. They likely went under within sight of land, so close to freedom they could see the lights of San Francisco. But here's what keeps this case alive. The U.S. Marshals Service never closed it. To this day, they maintain it as an active investigation. They follow leads. They update age-progressed photos. They believe, or at least they don't disbelieve, that those 3 men might have made it. Consider the evidence. The Anglin brothers were strong swimmers from childhood. They'd grown up in Florida's waterways, Frank Morris had an IQ in the top 2% and had escaped from every other prison that held him. They planned for 6 months with extraordinary patience and precision. Everything they built worked. The dummies fooled the guards. They made it out of their cells, up the pipes, onto the roof, down the wall, into the water. The raft inflated. The paddle was found floating, not sunk, suggesting it was used and then released or lost, not that it went down with drowning men. And here's the bit that gives pause. If they drowned that night, where are the bodies? San Francisco Bay typically yields up its dead within days. 3 bodies should have surfaced. None did. The personal effects found could have been deliberately left behind as misdirection. The life preserver washing up might have been damaged and discarded, not evidence of drowning. More after our break.
Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai.
Some investigators believe they made it to Angel Island, rested, then swam the remaining distance to Marin County in stages, that they had help waiting on shore, though Alan West claimed they planned to rob a clothing store and steal a car, that they split up, assumed new identities, and disappeared into America or beyond. The alternative theory says the bay's current swept them out through the Golden Gate into the Pacific, where the bodies sank in deeper water, never to surface. That 3 men who'd planned so brilliantly still couldn't overcome the simple physics of cold water and strong currents. That Alcatraz's reputation remained intact. Alan West, the man who couldn't get his grate loose that night, he gave investigators every detail of the plan, showed them exactly how it was done, but he never revealed whether they had outside help waiting, never said if they planned to go their separate ways, never admitted to knowing anything about their fate. He served out his sentence and was released years later. Alcatraz itself closed less than a year after the escape. Officially, it was due to operational costs. Running a prison on an island was prohibitively expensive, but some wondered if the successful breach of America's most secure facility played a role. The escape-proof prison had been escaped. Whether the men survived didn't matter to the prison's reputation. The rock had been beaten. Here's what makes this enduringly fascinating. It's not about glorifying criminals. All 3 men were career criminals who'd made terrible choices. Morris and the Anglins robbed banks. They deserved to be in prison. But the sheer audacity, the patience, the ingenuity of the escape itself, that's remarkable. Creating tools from spoons, building a raft from raincoats, sculpting dummy heads so convincing they still unnerve people decades later, planning for 6 months in a maximum security facility without detection, coordinating between multiple cells without modern communication, exploiting the prison's structural weakness with improvised engineering, and then vanishing so completely that 6 decades of investigation can't definitively say whether they drowned or lived. That's the ultimate escape, not just from the prison, but from certainty itself. They became legends precisely because nobody knows how the story ends. Justice? Well, that's complicated. If they drowned, the bay delivered its own verdict. If they survived, they spent the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders, unable to contact family, living under false identities, always one slip away from capture. 3 men who'd already proven they couldn't live within society's rules, now forced to hide from it entirely. And the Marshals are still looking, still investigating, still following leads. For the 3 men of Alcatraz, freedom came at a price, either their lives in the bay or decades of permanent exile from everything and everyone they knew. That's the thing about legendary escapes. They capture our imagination because they represent the human drive for freedom against impossible odds. But they also remind us that some barriers exist for a reason, and the price of breaking them, whether death or a lifetime of hiding, might be steeper than the imprisonment itself. The thing about brilliant schemes is that they always end with handcuffs and bars, because no matter how clever you think you are, the house always wins. Now, if you enjoyed our show, tap that follow button and 5 stars in our ratings. Catch you next time.
Grep News. Tamez.